The persecution of the Baha'is in Iran, why it continues.
Kia ora and welcome to Baha'i on Air. Many of our regular viewers will be aware of some of the Baha'i teachings about the equality of women and men and our big goal of the unity of humankind and world peace. But one thing we would like to make people more aware of is how members of the Bahá'í Faith are being treated in the country of Iran. Ironically, this is the birthplace of the Bahá'í Faith, and ever since the inception of the Bahá'í Faith, Baha'is have been terribly persecuted, thousands of believers have been killed, and this has happened in various phases throughout history again and again, and it's still happening today. This is something we would like to make people aware of, and also to show people how they can possibly show support and get justice for people to not be persecuted just because of their religious beliefs.
In the 20th century, periodic outbursts of violence were directed against the Baha'is. But in 1979, with the establishment of the Islamic Republic, the persecution of Baha'is became an official government policy and was pursued systematically.
Our purpose here is to raise awareness of some of the injustices facing the Baha'is in Iran.
We're celebrating the freedoms we have here today and thinking about them and what they don't have.
The persecutions in Iran, they don't have the freedom for university or schooling or jobs. They just don't have the freedoms that we're used to here, the things that we take for granted every day. Our children going to school, being able to walk in safety, being able to have a Baha'i community and work together. It's a very different life that they have, and I guess part of what we just don't appreciate the freedoms we have, and really it's the freedom that they should have also.
My name is Ariana and I'm from Iran. I'm living in around Manica area. My parents, they both were killed in Iran. My father was in the 1980s. They got them, they disappeared. We didn't know what happened to them. We know that by this time they're killed. And my mother, in next year after that, was in National Special Assembly. She was an active Baha'i, and they also captured her and they execute her. This has been going on in Iran for a long time. My sister and brother, they're out of Iran, fortunately, but we are all suffering from what happened to our parents.
And they were potentially given the choice to say, I'm not a Baha'i.
Yes, they did give this choice. Almost all the Baha'is, they have that choice, but they decide to stay Baha'i. I mean, the belief, what you believe is what you are. And they strongly believe to serve mankind. And they strongly believe in unity of mankind. They strongly believe that to bring unity and love among people. And by their actions. And my parents couldn't, they could leave, but they were in a position that people would look up to them. And how could they leave? It's like, how would you leave your friends alone?
Can you explain to the New Zealand audience and others, what is Islam and its relationship to the Baha'i Faith? And we know not all Muslims are against Baha'i, and why is there this conflict there? Why is there this attempt to annihilate the Baha'is in Iran?
It's nothing to do with Islam. It's something to do with the group of this government. Whatever is against or they disagree with, it's bad, and people have to be killed. This is one thing that is very obvious at the moment.
So it's not about necessarily Islam, it's about a few power-hungry...
That's one thing.
Prejudice people.
And there are a lot of things involved. Some of the principles of Baha'i Faith of being the earth is but one country. That's probably they disagree with.
Because Baha'is believe that Islam is from God and we respect Muhammad. So, it's probably confusing for Kiwis and people outside to understand why this persecution happens. As a part of this discussion and exploration of the current situation of the Baha'is in Iran, I'm talking to Maxine Chan. Maxine is the Deputy Director for the Office of External Affairs for the Baha'is of New Zealand. Welcome, Maxine.
Thank you, Kirsten. I'm very happy to be here.
What do you think is the purpose behind this sort of fanatical hatred of the Baha'is, a minority group among their country? Why are they so adamant about harming them?
Well, it really has started back. We have to sort of go back in history and look at when the faith was founded in Iran, and it started with the founder of the Bahá'í Faith, which is Baha'u'llah, meaning the glory of God. And when he came and he brought tenets, principles, at the time that were historically, they were to change society and to sort of bring civilization, sort of moving it forward, and Iran wasn't ready for it, especially things like the equality of men and women, and that the belief of religion and science agreeing.
And this is sort of ironic considering that the Baha'is and people who watch Baha'i and are aware of their main goal is, educating children in positive morals, as you said, equality of men and women, harmony between the religions. And so it seems in some way that, the Baha'is would be peaceful, very productive members of society, and here, they're really attacking them.
Yes, and one of the things that we know as Baha'is is that we are obedient to our government. So unfortunately, that places us in a very vulnerable situation, and that the Baha'is are being victimised and being oppressed in such a way that it's very difficult for them to even make a case and to get legal representation. That is why it's very important for us in New Zealand and for Baha'is and communities and others who are concerned about the situation in Iran to make a stand and to approach their governments and to be able to let the rest of the world know that this is really going on. As the largest minority religion there as well, they are seen as a threat because we do espouse principles like the equality of men and women. And unfortunately, the Islamic Republic, that does not bode well because they've been in a position to keep women also in an inferior position. And so there are a lot of sympathisers within the country, a lot of women within the country, Muslim women, that can relate and empathise greatly with the Baha'i community.
So the Baha'i Faith is in no way promoting anti-Islam?
Absolutely not, absolutely not. The teachings of the Baha'i Faith are based on one God, and that religion is one and humanity is one. We respect other religions. The situation for us is and remains difficult because we don't have any legal standing as well. If Baha'is are arrested, they don't necessarily get legal representation immediately, and that is written into the constitution of the Iranian law. So we're facing these difficulties because from the religious perspective, we're not accepted, we are excluded, we are the others.
So for instance, in Iran, the Christians and the Jews are recognized as minority religions, but Baha'is don't even get represented at all under legal protection.
That's correct. So the prophets that came before Muhammad, they are recognized. As Baha'u'llah came afterwards, we are not included, we are not counted.
So you mentioned that this sort of persecution and program against the Baha'is, went back to when the Baha'i Faith first started in the mid-1800s. But there was another huge burst when things went downhill after the revolution in Iran in the 70s, and then great persecution of the Baha'is in the 80s.
That's right. So when the Ayatollah Khomeini came to power and when the Shah was overthrown, it was a very tumultuous time in Iran, and at the time too, I think, not just Baha'is, but everyone in general, there was such a huge change. And the biggest change that they experienced there too was women's rights and the women's movement that emerged from that, because the hijab then was made compulsory. So the Baha'is, although we are very concerned about the situation for the Baha'is in Iran, we are as concerned for the innocent people of Iran who are being thrown in prison because they are making noise against the government.
The contribution of the Iranian Baha'is to the Iranian society is becoming more and more understood, okay? The Baha'is have contributed tremendous advancement of Iran. And my father, for example, he had a secondary school in Iran that was very well known, but because he was a Baha'i, he could not register under his own name. So he had to have somebody else to be a partner with him, which was okay. But again, that was another example. It was not a persecution kind of thing. It was they did not have the same opportunities. Of course, they were smart because they know, hey, Baha'is of Iran, they got, they were educated. They believed in education. So how can we kill this society? How can we kill the entire community? So let's stop them from going to school. Of course, that didn't stop the Baha'is from getting education because it's so fundamental to the teachings of Baha'u'llah. It's a mystery, I think. The way that the Baha'is of Iran are suffering, I think every aspect of their suffering, and maybe something beautiful organically will grow out of that will, become a model for the entire planet perhaps to emulate.
One of the recent ways to really hurt the Baha'is in Iran currently is to deprive them of education. And we have a lovely guest here to New Zealand. We have Marjan Dawoodi, who's visiting, and you have experienced from many different angles this what Ariana and Mona mentioned, this Baha'i Institute of Higher Education. Tell us more about that.
Well, from my personal experience, I must say that everything started, of course, in from the very first year after revolution, when they expelled all the students from universities. They gave us application form, and the prominent question in this application and the main reason for this application to be given to the students were mentioning their religion. And then they asked us to write it. Of course, it was again another choice that we had to make. We wrote, we are a Baha'i, and then we were expelled from university. There's no academic environment, no teacher, no internet, nothing truly for 8 years, just dreaming about one day having the opportunity to attend one class and listen to one lecture, perhaps. But we never gave up the dream, truly, until 8 years after, through all those black years of hearing different news about persecutions and executions and killing all the loved ones. One day, a lady, a lovely friend, came to our house and said, well, there is an opportunity now to continue your education by correspondence. There was no internet, through Indiana University in the United States. It was truly a dream come true for all of us. After this Indiana University program, Baha'i community came to the conclusion, because the number of students increased and it was very expensive and this was really not that much doable time-wise. They decided to create a university of their own. And we also had professors and instructors to be also expelled from their job as wonderful, prominent scientists and researchers and professors of different good universities of Iran being educated in wonderful universities outside of Iran, in Berkeley and Harvard University. We had some professors who were out of job. So students and these professors and these scientists, everybody decided to create a university of their own. And it was so beautiful. It was, in fact, a child to this Indiana program.
So what year did that start?
Early 90s. They started what we call now as Baha'i Institute of Higher Education, BIHE, and still, after 34 years, we are hearing day and night about the arrests, about the persecution and how they confiscated so many different times all the computers, all the facilities, everything, and the university continued functioning. That never stopped, because this is the love for education, and it means a lot to people who are helping with this program and for the students who are being educated. It's really not something that you can take it away from them by putting them even in prison and killing some of them. That you cannot take away the love.
I mean, for us, it was the execution of our parents, okay? And as we're moving forward, you know, the vilest form of violence and abuse of human rights, the recipients are the children and the young people in Iran who are deprived of education, okay? Just imagine no school, no hope, no future, no job, okay? So the faith, it's changing, okay? So for us, it was a different kind of a tragedy, and it's a continuous tragedy for the rest of the Baha'i community in Iran.
Welcome back to Baha'i On Air. In this episode, we're looking at the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran, and in particular, the denial of access to tertiary education to young Baha'is in Iran. Our next guest is Shireen. Welcome, Shireen.
Thank you.
Could you start by telling us how you came to New Zealand?
Well, we moved to New Zealand about just over 10 years ago. I was still in my last year of high school, but it was a long time before that my parents knew that my brother and I won't be able to get any tertiary education if we were still living in Iran. So it was a long time before that they decided they need to move somewhere else, but it took them a long time to be able to get passport, because that's another right that Baha'is are denied of.
That's really quite recent, that you left Iran, different to our other guests, perhaps much more recent experience. When you were in primary school, intermediate, secondary school, and in such a big city, were you marked out as different as being a Baha'i?
Yes, you are different. I mean, going through primary school was probably easier, but as you get older, and especially when you get to high school, it gets more and more challenging. There are a limited number of schools you can go to. We're talking about Baha'is being denied of tertiary education, and that's absolutely true. But also at level of a primary school, there are a limited number of schools you can go to.
As a Baha'i, you mean?
As a Baha'i, not every school will accept you. You have options. You don't have many options. You have to go to the schools that they accept you, and even when they do, you go through so many challenges.
So on behalf of the Baha'i community of New Zealand, what sorts of actions has your Office of External Affairs been taking?
So among the actions that we've been taking, last year we had a launch of a campaign, and that was the 5 Years Too Many. And basically it was to commemorate the anniversary of the imprisonment of the Iran. Now this group of people, the Iran, they were leaders of the Baha'i community. So they were handed a sentence that was pretty shocking. It was 20 years basically for being Baha'i and doing things that I've done in the past, which is run children's classes and been members of like an administrative group to help, organise the affairs of the Baha'i community. So basically that was their crime.
And they were given 20 years for that?
20 years. And so that was the highest and unjust sentence that you can imagine. They didn't have access for months to any legal representation. So the launch was held at the Langham Hotel, and we invited a number of people from the Law Society, from the government, people that may have heard about the Baha'is in Iran, or people that may help us with our cause and following some action. And among the actions that we asked them to do were things like write to the ambassador of Iran. They could sign a petition. We ourselves had written a letter to our Minister, Honourable Minister Murray McCulley, about the situation, and that we had gathered together and that we were wanting and hoping that the government would also try and hold the Iranian government accountable for the situation of the Iran. From that launch as well, we've also had visits to ministers, so Baha'is in their communities have been visiting their local MPs as well, and also sharing a report. And in that report, this report that was published by the Baha'i International Community in March last year, 2013, that report was called Violence with Impunity, Aggression Against the Iranian Baha'is. And that report details and accounts of the persecutions, the imprisonments. There's lots of documents that had been given to the Baha'i International Community, and it was published and shared. So.
My name is Mose Takuma. I'm a Baha'i and I live in Sandringham, which is just the next neighbourhood over. I joined the Baha'i Freedom Walk because I wanted to show my support for our fellow Baha'is who are in Iran, who've been imprisoned, 2 women and 5 men. They've been imprisoned because of their faith basically. Baha'is in Iran have been persecuted for a number of years, and we just want to show our support for those people who have been imprisoned simply because they believe in a different religion to the predominant one, which is Islam.
My name is Jimena Reyes, and I'm here today with my husband, Mose Takuma, who's here at the meeting point in Rocket Park. I'm here with my children, Marcelo and Micaela. It's just been amazing being a part of this. The sad situation right now happening is that there are Baha'is at this moment in time in Iran going through a very terrible time, being locked up in prison for beliefs for believing in unity, believing in peace and love, and taking part in this Freedom Walk means that we can all make people aware of what's going on and what's happening in the world today, and perhaps show everybody out there that we can all live together in happiness and believing in the religion that we want to believe in together in unity.
Yeah, I'm so pumped. Just knowing that what we're doing it for, and seeing all the other faces and seeing all the other beautiful souls walking as well, it just makes you really inspired. And just, you know, when you're starting to feel tired and exhausted, you see people in front of you and they're like, come on, you can do it, you can do it. And we're like, yeah, we can do it, we can do it. It's awesome. And especially getting up to the summit, I think that feeling of fulfillment and that something has been accomplished. We can't just do segments of it, we wanted to do the whole thing. Yeah, that's cool. It's pretty awesome.
My best New Zealand friend. We're always together. We do activities together. We go to Tai Chi. We go. Yes, we are talking. We're talking to them.
Do you want to tell us about your book and why and how you wrote it?
This book actually is not something that I wrote. It's a collection of the letters and comments of the people about my parents' interviews, her interviews, my father's poems, and the diary. So this has been collected and put together.
The diaries, the reason actually we decided to publish it was because the diaries is pre-revolution, most of it. It shows a woman who's like 30 years old, 32 years old. That's when she started writing these diaries. And in this, and she says the reason I decided to write this diary is so that at the end of every year I can look at the previous year and determine and estimate how useful my life has been, okay? She was really, really ahead of time, very, very exceptional woman, very beautiful physically, very prominent, very smart, and she just was a multitasker, you know, in so many ways. And to be honest with you, I mean, not because she's my mother, but I have never met a woman that, you know, just had the same ambiance about her, you know. And I can say that with confidence because I don't really feel as, I mean, she has many, many daughters, millions of daughters all over the world. And I was very young when I left Iran, just barely turned 17, both of us left Iran. So she has a lot more, she contributed a lot more to other kids and daughters, you know, boys and girls education that she had the opportunity to do for us. So I can say that with confidence. She's changed many, many lives, touched many, many lives. And her story, the courage that she showed after the revolution, and of course before the revolution as well. You know, she used to go to prisons and visit the prisoners, Baha'i prisoners, even though everybody was after her. She knew they were after her. The courage and the love that she showed, it was only under the those circumstances of extreme persecution and deprivation that these gems of humanity comes out. And she really truly demonstrated and reflected that. And so it's easy for me sometimes to talk about her than it is for my sister, because my sister Ariana lived in Iran a few years more than I did. And so, but for me it was a little bit more distant. And it's true, my love. Anyway, so she was truly a gem, a unique woman.
What other sorts of support for the Baha'is have been happening globally?
Fortunately, we are guided by our Baha'i international community and we get regular updates from them, and we do hear about what other countries around the world are doing. You know, and along with our efforts, Australia, England, America, and many other countries are doing very similar things, and they're finding ways that they can bring this to the attention of the public, to the media, and also we have consultative status at the UN. And so there are submissions that are being put forward, there are requests that are being put forward, and our government can support those. They can support different motions that hold Iran accountable. I think it's really important for us to remember, especially in New Zealand, that we do have a voice and that we are able to contribute to the betterment of their situation in Iran, even though it's so far away. But because of this international outcry, this is the reason that things are not worse. Unfortunately, in the past, what had happened was that a lot of the persecution happened because it was not highlighted and because the international community were not aware of what was going on. So this is really crucial. We are aware of different policies that had been put in place. There is a memorandum, it's referred to as the Golpaigani Memorandum, and it was released in 1991, and it was written on behalf of the cultural minister, and it was validated and confirmed by their supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini. And basically in that document it was saying that all access to progress, including education, employment, any sphere where Baha'is can be part of society needed to be blocked. So we already know that this has been building up systematically, that the persecutions of the Baha'is is not accidental. There has been a very progressive, systematic approach to this situation there, and that we know that without international attention, it will just continue. So by holding Iran, who wants to be part of the international community, they have the same legal duty as New Zealand to uphold human rights. I think I just sort of want to end by saying that the Baha'i community in Iran, they want to contribute back to their country. They love Iran. They want to be able to serve their community, to serve humanity.